you hear the intro, you know what time it is. That sound just will never get old for me. I mean, it probably will after about 3 more episodes, but hey, then it's time to switch up the intro. That's how we're going to do things. Welcome in, everyone. I'm Tyler Pyburn from 5 Tool Productions. This is Create Smarter Live. We have kind of a news commentary show is what we started here. It's all about entrepreneurship for small and medium-sized businesses, and especially marketing, from the marketing side of things when it comes to those businesses. So the way we kind of break down the show is tips and trends, what's going on in the industry, and then of course we have our expert interviews. So we have a great couple of interviews, one that we recorded actually just a couple of weeks ago, and then we have a live interview. Dr. Amanda Elam is going to be joining us in just a few minutes to talk about some interesting research that she's done at Babson College. So that's going to be coming your way, but before we get started, we have to dive into the news. So let's kind of get things rolling with our very first news segment, and we're going to be talking about Facebook Messenger. So Phil, who is behind the glass, Phil, say hi to everybody out there. I want you to just give everybody a wave, let everybody know that you're here.
Yeah, hello. I'm here. I wasn't expecting you to come to me so quickly. How are you today, Tyler?
To be totally honest with you, I wasn't expecting to either until I started talking. I said, you know what? Why not bring Phil in right away and let's have a little fun? So I'm sure your fingers were scrambling, going a little crazy.
It's all good.
My apologies, but let's have a little fun in the process.
No, absolutely. Thank you. Excited to talk about Facebook Messenger. Favorite topic of mine.
So this is something that Phil actually sent me yesterday. We were kind of going back and forth on some of the things that were coming out recently. And the thing that's interesting is Facebook Messenger, if you haven't seen, they have actually rolled out Facebook Messenger rooms. Now, these are available to 50 different people that can come on into one room, very similar to a Zoom, a Hangouts, or even a Skype. But you can bring in 50 different people, but they've actually taken it another step further, and they are going to be rolling it out to Instagram as well. So within Instagram Messenger, they are now going to go ahead and have the ability to say, we can access this by way of Messenger through Instagram, which is pretty cool. Now, the thing that I find pretty interesting about this more than anything else was kind of the numbers. So far from Facebook alone, their group chat video is up about 1,000%. As you can imagine, a lot of people jumping on video. There's like kind of no real surprise there, but the number is huge because people are using Facebook Messenger a lot, but not so much as video, to be completely honest with you. They are now up 1,000%. Pretty cool to see. The other piece that I thought was kind of cool about this is the whole idea that it's not like an invite where Zoom, you basically send out an invite for someone to join. This is anybody can join, so it really is just a link. So if you invite someone on or if you send them the link, they can join, but they can also drop off. So while yes, the limitation is 50 total people, you do have the ability to kind of come and go as you please. So say if Phil jumped on and decided to leave 5 minutes later because he was just bored of me talking, which happens more often than you think, somebody else could go ahead and jump on and join right away. So it is interesting to see. Phil, what were kind of your thoughts? You were the one that actually found this article and sent it all over to me.
Yeah, I'm always just interested really more than anything when Facebook and Instagram kind of really show that they are one company. It's easy to forget sometimes that they're one and the same. But the implications of those two things working together is always important from an advertising standpoint. I think it's important to think about how are they going to monetize this? Is there going to be ads, served in video chats at some point? Ads are already served in Messenger. You can make appointments in Messenger. And, over the last couple of months, there's been a lot more that Facebook and Instagram have rolled out in stories specifically about buying gift cards and ordering food and items and things like that. So there's always a commerce angle and there's always an advertising angle when it comes to Facebook and Instagram. And I'm curious as to what that will come. It always seems like when it's kind of cross-platform, it's a bigger priority for Zuckerberg at large, I guess. So it's always curious to me to see when they really prioritize something and make it live across both platforms.
Yeah, it definitely is. Always is to see. And we're talking about platforms. Let's shift our focus. Let's talk about LinkedIn, because LinkedIn, well, they've seemed to be a little bit behind in terms of rolling things out like live, but it seems like they're going to be taking another step. So this latest article, Phil, if you want to jump into my computer, we could see they came out with this just on May 12th, so really just a couple of weeks ago. They're talking new things for LinkedIn pages, and the thing what's interesting is virtual events. That's what they're going to be talking about right now. So they're virtual events. If you haven't seen their events feature, if you log on specifically on mobile, if you go onto the kind of the left tab, you can see and you can add and create an event. Now they're merging their live with events, meaning you can go live within a virtual event. Now, the thing that I want to caution everybody about, this doesn't mean, because we tested it ourselves this morning, you can't just automatically go live on LinkedIn. You still have to go through the process of filling out the form, setting things up to make sure that we can go ahead and say, yep, you are able to go live. You do have access to live streaming to LinkedIn Live. They haven't rolled it out to everybody. So caution there. However, if you do go live on something like Vimeo, YouTube, Facebook, you can create that link and drop it into LinkedIn events and can kind of have a private page for people to watch it within LinkedIn. So if you were in the higher ed industry, or if you were in just marketing and you want to have your own kind of virtual marketing conference, you can invite people. You can make it public where anybody can join, or you can make it private and start sending out your own invitations yourselves and have some of your connections and people that you invited to invite other people as well to join. So it is an interesting feature, but the live portion is something that we've said time and time again that LinkedIn is kind of lacking on, Phil.
Just waiting for them to accept that invite. It's interesting who they've rolled it out to and how they've chosen to roll it out, and clearly prioritizing, large-scale influencers and things like that, which totally makes sense. But I think a lot of people, especially right now, are eager for that to go out a little more widely and see, the full-scale rollout of LinkedIn Live to the masses, which it's got to be inevitable. You have to assume that any day, any week, any month now, the tide is going to turn, and it's going to be open for everyone, because I would imagine LinkedIn would like people to be streaming live there as opposed to streaming to YouTube and linking in their LinkedIn profile if they don't yet have access. But we'll see. I have no insight beyond the fact that I feel like everybody wants it, and you still need special beta access. So that's how these things go, but hopefully they'll open it up more widely, sooner than later.
Yeah, we shall see, because I have yet to see anybody that is kind of a regular person and not an Uber LinkedIn celebrity, I should say, that doesn't have access, that has access at this point. So like I said, we'll kind of wait and see. But talking about platforms and talking about people kind of rolling out new features, especially in the wake of the current crisis and pandemic, Google, no stranger to rolling new things out all the time, obviously. But they have recently just rolled out kind of some new features on their platform. So right now, Google lets merchants accept bookings for online services. This is one thing that's interesting, because before, yes, they had things that you could update your own kind of Google page to say, yes, we're currently open, our hours have changed. However, now you're being allowed to and have the ability to go ahead and say, I'm going to update my entire listing and take online orders. You can also change for things like curbside pickup. So a lot of interesting things that they're trying to make it easier for businesses to not only be found, but to show exactly how available and how accessible they are at this moment in time. Some of the other things to kind of know, you have to be registered with Google for Business. That's one of the big pieces of it. They are also going to be expanding its Reserve with Google services, which lets consumers book tickets and make appointments online as well. So that's one of the big pieces of it all. Is before, you could, yes, find their phone number, you could find their address. You sometimes could order online, but now you can book appointments. So things like hairdressers and salons and things like that, and barbershops, you can book online ahead of time. So they're trying to basically sync people's calendars as well. So another piece that, especially if you have kind of the need for that as a small business owner, you can have that available to you. So that is one piece that I thought was kind of cool. Obviously, Google, no stranger to always innovating on a consistent basis, but in the wake of everything taking place, you'll kind of like to see it. So speaking of evolving and having to evolve in kind of the current climate, it's time to move forward from the news. Let's go ahead and get into some of kind of our interview segments, really. And we're first going to be talking about kind of by the numbers. We're going to dig into some of the data, because we have on Dr. Amanda Elam and the reason why I have to look at this is because the name is long and the name is new. So she's a research director with the Diana International Research Institute. So yes, that is a mouthful, at Babson College, but they are doing some incredible things, and they just put together a great study featuring on female entrepreneurs. So we're going to go ahead and kind of dive into the numbers. So Diana, excuse me, I just called you Diana, but it's not that. Amanda, welcome in. How are you doing today? Thank you so much for joining us.
Good. Thank you very much for having me.
So first and foremost, give me a little insight, a little background history on the Diana Institute.
Right, so the Diana Institute is new. We've just started it, just launched it at Babson last year. It actually creates a permanent home for a 20 plus year international research consortium called the Diana Project. So in 1999, a group of researchers, women's entrepreneurship researchers, got together and decided that we needed to work together to kind of figure out this piece, the challenges and the resources that women entrepreneurs need to grow. It's gone very well, but we decided it was time to create a permanent home and to open up the conversation to other stakeholders. So we've created a membership organization, and we have investors, entrepreneurs, policymakers, educators, and other stakeholders in the entrepreneurial ecosystems and communities around the world who are participating in this conversation around the importance and needs of women entrepreneurship.
Awesome. I love it. Really cool. Really cool indeed. So kind of with that, let's kind of dive into some of the research that you've recently done. Tell me about the study that you guys just kind of wrapped up, the first part of, I should say.
Right. So we've actually launched, we have 4 surveys that we designed to measure the experiences of women entrepreneurs through this global crisis, right? So we have had the health and economic crisis. Businesses are, small businesses are really bearing the brunt. And women entrepreneurs in particular are vulnerable in this crisis for 3 different reasons. Right. One, they have the usual structural inequalities that women-owned businesses often face. They're often smaller and younger and work in very competitive industry sectors. And 2, they are in the industry sectors most impacted by the current crisis, right? So essential workers, women-owned businesses are overrepresented in these sectors, and also in the sectors that are most shut down, right, by the stay-at-home orders, restaurants, other service industries, personal care, that sort of thing. And then the third reason is because women carry the brunt at home. So with the schools closed and family care demands exploding, women business owners are really taking it for the team, right? So we were just interested in better understanding the challenges that they were facing. And rather than send out a long survey, we thought maybe it would be better to stage it. So the first survey, what we got out in April, and the goal there was just to get a sense of what their immediate response was and what their immediate needs were. And that's the survey we'll talk about today. And we have 3 other surveys. One's closing today, the second one that digs into a little more detail around the actions taken. The third and fourth surveys are still open. They look at stakeholder management in survey 3, and then personal leadership and sort of the impact on personal life in the fourth survey.
So let's talk about that first survey and an immediate impact. Give me some of the numbers in terms of the amount of people that participated, and just so people can get an idea of kind of the size and scale.
Right. So we had in the first survey 86 women business owners surveyed. Over 90% of these businesses were really small, so 50 or fewer employees, and about 3/4 of them earning less than 1 million in revenue. And this is not unusual for, when I talk about the structural inequalities for women business owners, women are much more likely to run solo proprietorships, so be solopreneurs, I think is the cool term everyone likes to talk about today.
I was going to say that's the hashtag, right?
Yeah, like 90%, right, of women-owned businesses are sole proprietorships. So that's huge, and compared to 70% average. So we're really focusing on these tiny businesses. Only 1/4 of them were older than 5 years, so they're very young businesses. And about 1/3 of them were designated as essential services by their state and local governments, and fewer than 10% were VC funded.
Was it, from a location standpoint, was it regional, national, global? Where were these folks located?
We actually went global about, so most of them were located in the United States. Almost 2/3 were located in the US. And most of them were professional and consumer services businesses.
Interesting. So talk about some of the findings. What kind of go through some of the numbers, if you will. What was something that kind of what was something that really stood out to you? Does anything take you by surprise?
Um, I think, well, I've also been tracking all the other surveys that are coming out on small businesses, right? So one of my first questions is, how does our data compare to what we're seeing generally for small business owners? So consistent with other studies, we found about 2/3 of the women business owners were reporting a drop in revenue. And less than 10% were reporting an increase in revenue, because I think we're all familiar with some of the businesses that actually this has created a huge opportunity for, right? So online services, anything online entertainment, a lot of the online, a lot of the consultants, therapists, doctors have made a transition to online, and we know that women have some representation in those businesses. So I think the big impact were those. I was really intrigued personally with, when we asked about the actions, we asked about a question that nobody else is really asking about, and that is, did you reduce executive pay? And almost 40% of these businesses, it's one of the first actions they took. Right? They suspended executive pay. Yep. And I guess we're not entirely surprised. 1 out of 3 said they delayed vendor payments, right? And 1/4 of them said right out of the gate they reduced employee hours, and which makes sense on 2 fronts. Right? One, you want to give your employees a chance to make their own life adjustments to what's going on around them, and also because you may need to reduce payroll. Now, remember, we're measuring this before PPP is really seemed like a real thing to a lot of these businesses.
Yeah, and that's kind of the one thing to keep in mind too. Your follow-ups kind of include that, correct? Right? Because that's I actually like how you're releasing this in stages, because it does kind of give you an idea of how people have changed their ways during the course of time, and the longer this kind of is drawn out, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's normal to expect that people react one way, and as the uncertainty is reduced, right, as we become more certain about what the future is, we may make other changes. We had, I think, almost 1/4 of the business owners we surveyed said that they are closing down their businesses permanently, 1 out of 4. And this varies a lot across the industry sector, how these businesses are responding. I don't think we were really surprised with when we asked them what types of relief would be helpful to you. But I was really surprised at where they were finding the best resources and support. Overwhelmingly,
that was the thing. When I went through the numbers, that was the piece that really stood out to me in terms of where they're finding the support. Not necessarily the government, right?
No, and not local government, not universities, not local business centers. It's other entrepreneurs and other business owners. Maybe not surprisingly.
What form do you think that, I mean, I know that's such a tough, what form do you think that comes in? Where you say, support from other, do you think it's conversations? I mean, it's tough to say, right?
Well, so it forced self-reflection on me, because in addition to being a researcher, I also run a business. And so as a business owner, I was thinking, well, where was I getting the best? And the answer is, it was my business network. I was sharing everything I learned about the PPP, everything I learned about the SBA funding, every webinar that I found useful, whether people like this or not, I was forwarding that replay link, right? It's like,
no, I honestly did the exact same thing. If I found something, I was sharing with a friend, and vice versa, right? I mean, yeah.
And I was also and I have to say, I was also reaching out to business owners I thought might not have the kind of network connections that I had. So, I know a woman who runs a cleaning business, and I thought, wow, I don't know if she participates really actively in business networks, so I'm going to make a point to let her know. The woman who runs the massage therapy business that I go to, my hair salon, I reached out to these organizations because I didn't know, and it may be that they had professional associations or other networks of similar business owners where they could get those resources. I just wasn't sure. So I went out of my way, too, to share those resources with other women business owners I knew, and a lot of male business owners, too. They're in my network. I have, especially in medical diagnostics, I know a lot of guys who are running companies. And that's where some of the most useful resources and, content came from. So maybe we shouldn't have been so surprised.
I was going to say, I mean, maybe not, especially like you said, from the self-reflection standpoint. Yep, I think all of my information came from wife, aunts and uncles, other entrepreneurs, right? I mean, it's just the way it kind of rolled in for me, for sure. Do you think, obviously we'll find out, and I feel like we're going to have to check in with you now as we find more results to come forward. Do you feel like that might change over the course of time? Do you think things are going to change? Because like you said before, it is a natural kind of progression to see kind of immediate action. You're not necessarily too terribly sure what's going to be taking place. And if this survey was out prior to the PPP, their perceptions could obviously change too, because, while friends can obviously support you monetarily, a PPP does come in handy for a lot of folks, ourselves included. So how do you feel like it's going to kind of continue to evolve, really?
Well, I think I think two things. I think one, for sure, we're going to see more optimistic responses, right? Because initially we were crisis planning, right? And in this data, we also saw that, as you might expect in any crisis, it highlights the strengths and weaknesses in any business model. And we saw people talking about the new opportunities that presented, as well as some of the lessons learned. Like we had about 16% of our sample noted that they learned a hard lesson in financial management and crisis planning. At the same time, we had a quarter of the sample talk about, wow, I hadn't thought about it, but the online opportunity for my business is huge, and I never thought about it before, or I never got to it. Also, online marketing. A lot of businesses, it just seems, I mean, this is what you guys do, right? But this is, it's really technical, and women sometimes are a little reserved to go launch into the technical. They're very market oriented and very customer oriented on average, but they're not as quick to jump in and figure out how to use LinkedIn Live or Facebook Live or some of these other technologies. And this is based on my observation rather than survey data, but the male marketers are very quick to deploy technology, whereas the women are they take different approaches to it, or focus on messaging a little more carefully. But so I expect
very
it
similar to
evolve.
Just at Home. A guy will just throw technology at everything, right? I mean, it's just what happens sometimes.
Well, honestly, in my house, my husband gets full credit for automating all the bill pay, right? It's like our checkbooks are a thing of the past, because for him, technology will find a way. And I love that. And so we have a good partnership, right? I think that I'm also expecting it to get more granular and tactical. So I'm expecting responses to be increasingly specific as people figure out what that business continuation plan looks like. And what I'm reading right now, at least among the business owners I know, is that everyone's things are so much more certain right now that a lot of businesses are now shifting back to their growth plans. Like, they might not be exactly it, but if you're always planning 3 months ahead, they've already figured out we're probably going to hit recovery by this date, and we're going to be able to get back into a routine and get going. And so for the businesses who have survived, and for the businesses who aren't going to spend a lot more time in recovery, I'm seeing strong indications of businesses jumping back onto their growth plans.
Awesome. Very interesting stuff. So with this in mind, can people still participate? If so, where can they go to, one, see the results, and two, kind of participate and become a kind of an active member in something like this?
Right. So of course, I'm at a university, right? So the university, I can't just say go really quickly to www, but at babson.edu, you can search for the Diana International Research Institute, and that will take you to our page. Otherwise, I would be listing a very long URL. And on that page, you'll find information on membership, on the research that we've done, our annual conference, and the Impact Day we held last year, which was the first global convening of multiple stakeholders around women's entrepreneurship. The research tab is what takes people to the survey research, to the results, as well as to the open surveys if they'd like to participate directly.
Awesome. That
I
was
hope
great.
that wasn't too long, but
No, absolutely. We had it up on screen, and we'll also make sure to link it in our comments and things like that too, to make sure folks
Okay,
that can see it. So that was great. Well, Amanda, honestly, thank you so very much for taking time out and out of your day, especially given how beautiful the weather is. I know there's other things you could in fact be doing, but again, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the time, and have a great day.
You as well. Excellent stuff indeed. I absolutely love that. So with kind of the shifting of technologies and shifting of content, we're going to go ahead and shift our focus to talk a little bit more about content. So we spoke with Barb Mosier-Zink of Ingenix, which is a content management platform based out of Washington. Now, Barb is not in Washington. She actually happens to be up on this side of the time zone. She is in Halifax, New Brunswick, I believe is where she's located. But Barb joined us just a few weeks ago to talk about the content management industry and to talk about, from a content perspective, what brands should be doing and should be looking at. Great interview. You don't want to miss it. Let's take a look at it. So we welcome in Barb Mosier-Zink of Ingenix. Barb, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I think really the conversation I want to start off with is asking kind of the age-old question. Everybody struggles with it. What comes first, content or technology? Or is it a mix of both? I mean, it's loaded, so go ahead and take this wherever you like, but what are you really thinking from that perspective?
Yeah, well, content comes first. Absolutely. You know, technology is an enabler to anything you do. You have to know what you're writing, who your audience is, and how you need to reach them. And then you figure out what is the technology you need to actually make that happen.
So one of the things you cover a lot in your podcast and your blog post, you talk a lot about operations. Talk to me about content operations. What is it really?
Well, I guess that depends on who you talk to.
I was going to say, anybody you ask is going to have a different answer.
Well, and they do, which is kind of the way it is with every technology and everything, I think. But it depends. It could be anything from just having a really good process for creating the ideas of content and for the company. Maybe it's just for a certain group, and it's just the process that you go through to create, develop, review, and publish and manage that content ongoing. Or it could be really big in that it's something you do for the entire company, and you want to make sure that you have all the processes and technologies in place to support the needs of the company as a whole, so that when you talk to your customers, you're talking with one voice, and one voice means the content is very consistent across everything that you do.
So as a content creator myself, I hear process and I start to get choked up. I don't know what to think, because I feel like it sometimes bogs down the process a little bit. Your velocity isn't necessarily there. How do you work your team the right way to make sure that all the ducks are in a row ahead of time so that you can still get the content out at a good rate? Because right now, speed at some points is better than quality. Not all the time, obviously. Quality, you want stuff to be great. But, we kind of say, don't sacrifice something that's good for trying to make it perfect, right? Or don't sacrifice great for perfect. So, because it's never really perfect in everybody's eye. So from an operations standpoint, what should you do? What are some of the things that you need to keep in mind?
Well, first of all, I don't think that having a process in place means that everything has to be quality content. I think a process just means this is the flow of how things have to happen, so that everybody knows what their role is and that they know that they're the next step and it's coming to them. Whether or not you do that really fast or you wait and take your time and do a really top quality product really depends on how fast you do have to get something out the door. I saw this guy on LinkedIn say the other day that we're spending too much time on quality. You should just get your content out. But sometimes that content, when you do that, is just so crappy that just hurts your brand and hurts you, right? There's a balance. You want to do some really good quality pieces, but you also want to not wait to the last minute to get everything out the door. If you have a couple spelling mistakes, that's not the end of the world. I also write a column for Diginomica, and I hate to tell you how many times I've spelt the name of the person wrong I've interviewed and had to go back and beg my editor to change the name. But So, that kind of stuff happens. The process just helps you know what the steps are to make it go from one place to the other. Did I answer your question?
Definitely. And one of the things I have to ask, so, when you look at some of the kind of larger organizations, that it almost seems very silent, and it's not just the kind of the marketing department. Each kind of brand within a brand has its own marketing department, and it has their own content team within the marketing department. A lot of times I've seen that they're not cross-functional. They don't kind of co-communicate with one another in a sense. How do you break that mold? Because what ends up happening, I feel like, is that a piece of content is actually just created kind of in a vacuum, really, right? It doesn't have everybody kind of thinking about it. And you say, all right, here we're pushing this out, but not everybody is aware about it. How can we break down those silos in a sense?
Well, one of the ways you can do it is, instead of having just a content marketing team in every group, is have more of a centralized one. And each person in that group maybe works with an individual department, but they can all come back together and share their ideas and their concepts, and make sure that it is a consistent story you're telling across the enterprise. Because that's the biggest problem with separating it all out, is marketing is writing stuff for marketing, and sales might be getting marketing to write stuff for them, but they're not kind of talking back and forth. Customer service is writing their own stuff. But that's the challenge with having a disconnected voice to the customer. And the customer hates that, right? I would hate that. I hate that if I heard one thing from sales and then marketing was trying to push something else on me that didn't make sense. So you need to have some kind of, sometimes central doesn't work. If you're really, really big, I think a central one does work, but maybe you also have groups in other departments. It's just that they all end up kind of working together at some point. So they're not always just so completely siloed.
Talk to me, kind of going back to that original question about content first or technology first. What role now does kind of technology play in kind of bringing everybody together to break down those silos and also continue to pump stuff out at a pretty rapid pace?
Well, different types of technology for content plays everything from helping you manage what you're creating to actually giving you a place to create it, so everybody can create their content in one content management solution. But you want the kind of content management solution like Ingenix has, that will publish to different channels and different devices, so that sales might have their own kind of channel and marketing has their own channel, but you're always creating that content in one spot and everybody can kind of reuse it cross-purposely. So you need a place to track what you're creating, you need a place to create it and manage it and publish it, and then you need a place to show where and how you're promoting it across your social media and your email and whatever channels you're using to try to let people know that you've got this great information out there.
I mean, it kind of goes back to your original editorial calendars, right? Like, here's what's going out, here's what's going when, and here's, on what channels it's going to be living on, whether it's, something from an internet perspective, something external, is it going on social, where does it actually live? I mean, those are kind of the pieces that really help. So give me, if there's kind of one tip that you would say that when you're starting out and we're looking at content technology, what do you what do you advise people when they're kind of getting started from a content strategy perspective? Where do you tell them to really start, you need to look at and kind of get everything in a row so that you can say, all right, now it's time to go ahead and start creating? Where do you start with all of this?
Oh my God, I don't know how to answer that. Obviously, you need a solution to create and manage your content. So you're looking for a content management system. But I don't know that that's necessarily the first piece of technology you need. You could just work with a simple spreadsheet, somewhere that you're actually tracking what you're trying to create and who you're creating it for, and things like your keywords and your phrases and your audiences. Like, start with a spreadsheet, start really simple, and make sure you have that map all out. But then once you want to actually do something with that content, then you need some kind of a content management system. And if it's your website, you want a web content management system. If it's email, then you want a marketing automation system or a simple email marketing solution. It really, again, it depends on what channel you're trying to reach out to, what technology is going to work best for you.
But again, it starts with the content, right? Because as many times as I had this conversation with people, there's so many different shiny new tools out there, right? And every day something else is getting kind of thrown out there. And throwing technology at your content doesn't necessarily make it better. Makes you, it sometimes does, but like you said, you have to have the content in place first, right? I mean, that's kind of my big issue that I have with everything. So this is awesome. Barb, honestly, can't say thank you enough for taking time out of your day. Where can folks find out more about Ingenix? And actually, before we dive into that, tell me about Ingenix. What actually is it? Explain it to me.
So Ingenix is it's an agile content management platform that basically it's a combination of a pure, what you might, not traditional, but a decoupled content management system with a hybrid or a headless solution. We call it a hybrid solution, so that you can use Ingenix to create all your content in a way that makes it easy to mix it and package it up and then publish it out to different places based on your website. Maybe you've got a customer portal, maybe you've got an intranet. Like you can publish to any channel you want. That's the way Ingenix is built. That's why we refer to it as an agile content management system. So it's a pretty cool tool, I think, if people are looking for one place to manage their content, but multiple places to publish, that it's worth looking at.
Very cool. I've had a chance to kind of poke around in the back end a little bit myself. It is pretty cool to see the way that the whole entire platform kind of works together. That's awesome. Where can folks find out more about it? Where do they go?
Their website is ingenix.com. So that's the best place to go. And we just did a brand new refresh of the website. So there is tons of information, not just on Ingenix and how it works alone, but also on all the strategies behind thinking about creating and publishing content.
Awesome. Barb, I love it. Thank you so much for taking time out of the day. Really appreciate you coming on and talking content, talking technology, and content operations, kind of all things in between, really.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks very much for inviting me.
There you go. That'll do it. Another great interview, another great episode in the books. I want to thank everybody who was kind of involved in today's show, from Phil in the background behind the glass, myself. I want to say thank you to Amanda and to Barb for taking time out of the day for jumping on the show with us. And for all of you, if you're sitting there watching live right now, thank you for watching live. If you're watching it on demand, thank you for watching on demand. Always appreciate the views. So that'll do it for us today. We'll be back next week, where I think we're going to be talking about content in a pandemic. What are other brands doing out there from a content perspective? What are they creating right now while they can't be face-to-face? All that and more coming up just a week away. We'll see you next time. Have a good one.